Hello everyone, it's Kylie. Welcome back to my channel. I have a journal I would like to share with you today. Her name is Faith. Faith actually has two sister journals, I guess, because they are similar, but I will be completing each one separately, so they will be different. And there will be hope and charity. So that was my husband's idea, faith, hope and charity. And yes, so I'm just going to be showing you Faith today, because I think if I tried to show you all three together, it would just be too long, because when I work on individual journals, I tend to fill them up a lot more with things because I just keep going and going. So this is Faith. She is a fabric covered journal with 4 signatures, and I've used this beautiful fabric from Emily's Etsy shop, Bluelinencottage, and this trim as well that I've sewn around the edge. You can see she's got some gorgeous things out the top and the side and the bottom, because I just love things coming out of journals like that. I've also put some really gorgeous vintage and antique glass beads on some of the signature strings, and there's a gorgeous heart-shaped glass bead there with a little rose on it. So lots of little pretty details. On the front here I have tucked in a little vintage flower, and I've tucked in a vintage wallpaper tag. This is a really stunning ribbon worked bow that I've stitched onto the front pocket. So I'll put those things, I might actually use that to show the pockets in the journal. Okay, so inside of Faith, I have used some really gorgeous antique French linen. I have a lot of this because I use it to embroider on. I love the rustic nature that it gives to embroideries. I've created some layered sort of ephemera here that can be used for collaging on one of my laminated collage tags, and I've attached all of those together with a large eyelet. So there's some vintage paper doily on there as well. On this side I've embossed some really pretty paper and tucked that into a lace pocket. Here is a stamped piece of fabric with a little ribbon flower and some vintage ephemera tucked in there as well, and I just love that layered look. I have used a couple of printable kits, and I will link those in the description below. This tag is from one of those kits, from one of my vintage doily kits that's tags and cards, and I've created sort of a tuck spot there and a little fabric tuck spot with some French eyelet there. I do use printable pages, but I also use antique and vintage book pages, music pages and ledger pages in my journals. This is a book page. It was a little bit wide, so I just folded it over and stuck some vintage wallpaper at the top, but I loved that image. So that's just in a tuck spot with some hand-dyed eyelet at the bottom. That's a vintage book page. On this page I've created a journal card with a really old French book page, vintage wallpaper and a little piece from a French journal, and I have sewn some trim to make a little pocket for a Will's cigarette card, so that's an original one in there as well. I also use some blank ledger. I like to try and balance my journals, which tend to fill up quite quickly when I'm working on them, with journaling space. So this is one of my big pink butterflies. I've put some glitter on and used it as a tuck spot, but you can journal there. And I've just added some really beautiful original pieces of ephemera to use for collaging, or just to simply leave there tucked in. A collaged tag with some beautiful vintage and antique pieces and wallpaper and some fabric. And throughout the journal I've used some of this gorgeous embroidered velvet ribbon, and it has little sequins and beads stitched in as well, and it's absolutely stunning. I did get that from an Etsy shop in the US, but I honestly can't remember the shop, and it was a while ago. But if I do find that information, I will definitely link that in the description. On this side, I've created a little a little flip with one of those tags. A little bit of cross stitching on the top there just adds a little feature, and I was lucky enough to get some Amity Bloom washi tape, so I'll be using little pieces of that in my journals. This is a really stunning piece. I'm not going to pull it out because it's one of those quite tight Tim Holtz clips. Beautiful vintage rose wallpaper, and it has actually been block printed, so it's sort of a bit it's very shabby chic, which I love. And here I've just woven some silk ribbon through a piece of trim. This is one of my floral watercolor printable cards, inked the edge and sewn it on, just so that you've got somewhere even to journal over, because it's quite a light print on top of the music paper. Here I have a piece of tulle lace that I have created, sort of a double tuck, so you could tuck something up there, and it is a pocket. And in here I've included a piece of vintage wallpaper, some dyed doily, paper doily, a piece of French fashion magazine, and I've sort of clipped it together because you can pull that apart, but I just love that really loose layered look. So that's just it's something fun that you can easily do. It requires no sewing. Some collaged printable page. This is a fabric tag, so space on the back with a few snippets and bits and pieces from my snippet container, which is overflowing. I do need to make snippet rolls. And here I've got another piece of that beautiful embroidered velvet ribbon. I'm trying really hard to use my special things. I have a little decorated paper clip by Tim Holtz there, and that flips out. This is actually a pocket here from one of my wallpaper tag kits, and I've made a little pocket out of French eyelet there with a fabric tag. I've layered some tulle underneath the fabric and a little bit of crochet trim, and that just sort of sits in there, and this flips over, so you could actually put something in that pocket and that will sort of hold it in. Some original ledger, another really old book page with some wallpaper, handmade paper, and French ephemera from the 1800s. And I was actually intending on making this a sort of long belly band, but I decided to actually use it around the page rather than cut off a piece and put it in my snippet basket. I wrapped it around so that it's sort of a double belly band on the two sides. This is some really gorgeous wallpaper on a tag. I've added a snippet at the top and another little piece of wallpaper, and I've just used a Tim Holtz tiny attacher, a little stapler, to staple that feature at the top there. That's a piece of ephemera from one of my kits. Here I've made a very simple little cluster of different laces with a mother of pearl button, and I've just tied that on. I've hand sewn that on, and that's a really easy way of doing that. And here I've created, it's sort of a layered tag. So I've got a piece of vintage music paper, some embossed paper with antique French ephemera, and a piece of antique wallpaper, and I've just zigzag stitched down the side, so you can actually use it as a tuck spot if you want, but you can also pull off parts of this to collage, or stick a piece of paper on the back and journal on it. So there's a few options there, but another simple way of making a decorative layered tag. Another tuck spot on that side and one of those butterflies. On this side I've used a tag with a little piece of trim at the top, inked the edge and just tucked a little piece of vintage ephemera in there to create layers. This is a flip out, so it's a tag that I've flipped out. There's journaling space on the back because I didn't want to hide that floral image from the book page behind it. And I've sewn a piece of fabric down the side of the tag and then down the side of the fabric attached to the page. There's also a little pocket on the front there as well. I tried to leave some things empty, which I struggle with because, yes, you need to allow space for the person who buys the journal to move in. This is a blank piece of ephemera which you could actually use to journal on from 1955, and I just used one of those little Tim Holtz paper clips. Beautiful silk ruffle there, and I sewed that on, creating sort of a tuck spot on the other side that I put a lace ruffle on, so lots of ruffles. And I've used a gorgeous and vintage glass German button on the end there, so that dangles down off the bottom of the journal. And I just love the image of that book page. Again, I just added a little piece of wallpaper to make it interesting and to sort of tie it in with the rest of the journal. Little snippet at the top there and some gorgeous lace there I've hand torn and stitched on as a pocket. And with this tag I've used some of that antique French fashion magazine, and I've just sort of laid little snippets at the top and some washi tape at the bottom. But how sweet is that little rose there? Now you don't throw those out. You keep those little snippets and you find a use for them. So that is a really simple way of adding a detail to the top of a tag. Gorgeous crepe, I think it's crepe de chine fabric. And this is the edge of it, and I've just sewn that over the top of a printable page, and I love that layered look. A butterfly here, and this is a flip out as well, where I've sewn the fabric onto the flip and onto the page, and this is some vintage French document paper. An original Belgian telegram, and I love the roses, so I didn't want to completely cover them, but I wanted to put a pocket, so I put a beautiful Swiss lace pocket there and a gorgeous vintage library card that I've done a little bit of collaging on with original ephemera. And I've used that lace, I wrapped it around and sewed it, so I've got a tuck spot there with the tag, but also a little tuck spot there with the lace as well, and I just love how that layered up. On this side I added some of my favorite vintage wallpaper. I do have that, I think, in a printable kit now, and yeah, it's not a pocket, it's just for beauty. Some washi tape there, a little embroidered doily snippet I've turned into a pocket, and I've put in a language card with some washi tape and a ticket. So that sort of adds a cute little layer, and I love how the colours sort of all go together. Here's another collaged journaling tag with original pieces, and I've just done a little up tuck there. On this side I have a receipt from the UK from 1930, and it had an orange stamp on it, so I've put some washi tape over the top because I wanted it to fit in with that pink theme. I've also used another vintage glass button there. The details on these buttons are just absolutely stunning. That's the other side of the telegram, and this is actually a big pocket at the top there, so a full page sort of hidden pocket. On this side I've used a little bit of glitter on a couple of pockets and things like that to add something a bit special, but that's a tuck spot from one of my printable kits. It's a piece of ephemera with a ruffle. And here I've created sort of like a belly band, but it's on the side of the page, so it's more like a pocket. But doing it this way, instead of stitching down there it means you have less stitching on the other side if that sort of bothers you. So that would be a lot of stitching. So I've just stitched the top and the bottom, and I've put it quite close to the center of the journal so that it's not going to come out the other side. And this is another journaling card that I've collaged embossed paper, antique French document from the 1700s, vintage wallpaper, balloon washi tape, and some antique French receipt. On this page I have created a tag out of that French fashion journal, added some wallpaper, some of that gorgeous vintage paper doily, and I've added a little ruffle at the top with a mother of pearl button that I've hand stitched on, so there's journaling space on the back, and I've just sort of tucked that in so it lays over the top and hides that little butterfly. I thought that was really sweet with a ruffle at the bottom. Here I've created a tuck spot. This is an original luggage tag with an original Victorian scrap. You can journal on the back of that, so that's tucked in at the top. And then I've made a little pocket out of fabric at the bottom, and no piece goes unused, so this is from that actual fashion journal, and I've just tucked that in there. Another one of those stunning embroidered velvet ribbon snippets that I've stitched onto there. On this side I have made it's sort of a tuck spot flip, so you can journal there obviously. This is a tuck spot here with a ruffle at the top, some washi tape, another tuck spot, a tag that's a tuck spot, and I have decorated a paper clip here with some snippets, and I've pinned that on that side, and I've tucked a piece of really gorgeous wallpaper, and you could use either side. I wanted just to create a loose layer on this page. On this side I have a decorated fabric tab with a couple of snippets and a little button I've hand stitched on with a thread, and I start from this end and I leave the thread loose and I tie a bow on this side because I just love the look of that. A couple more butterflies. This is an original Victorian calling card for Edna Reese, and I was going to call this journal Edna, but as I said, faith, hope and charity, my husband's idea, and it's probably one of the only times he's been involved in my crafting business, so I didn't want to dampen his enthusiasm by saying no. But this is an original French legal document with gorgeous handwriting, so that's and I've done a little bit of stamping in this journal. This is a German postcard from 1919, and it is a Klein postcard, so I've just tucked that in to a little pocket, and I've popped a bow on the top there just for something a bit pretty. On this page I've used some really gorgeous tulle lace, and I've made a pocket that you can see through, and I didn't want to put anything in it because I love the collage printed page on the back, but at the top here I've just woven a little vintage velvet flower to add interest. And to pick up, there's quite a few, like the lace is floral and there's floral on the printed page as well. And in the back here I just have one more journaling card that has space there with a little stamp, and I've used this cotton fabric, but it has like a raised lace pattern on it and some snippets at the top to make it a little bit interesting. So yes, very full. Faith is very full of ephemera, and she feels lovely in the hand. It's lovely to be back in my craft room. It's been quite a few, well, six to 8 weeks I think. We're actually in a rental at the moment because we're knocking down our house and rebuilding. So that's been crazy. 12 months of admin, and we're finally starting to physically do stuff. And I've also had some fairly major sinus surgery. I'm not sure if you can hear the difference, but I have lost a lot of my nasal twang because I've literally had my inside nose completely rearranged. So I can breathe through both nostrils now, and I have a lot less of severe thickening, so all of that's been cleaned out. So I couldn't really do any sort of crafting or anything for the 4 weeks, so I was sort of getting over that. So a lot of things going on, but I have a craft room in our rental house, so it's my happy place, and I'm finally able to get back into it. So thank you so much for watching. I hope to have Hope and Charity, the other 2 sister journals, finished in the next few weeks, so please stay tuned for that. Bye.